Hey there, welcome to the Breakthrough Creative. I'm your host, John McDevitt, and this is where we talk about the business of art and the art of business. Several episodes ago, I interviewed Craig Burgess. It was episode number 60, and he is a full stack creative. He's a designer. He's also the host of a podcast called the Get Doing Things podcast. And he interviewed me right after I'd interviewed him, or maybe it was vice versa. I can't remember how we set it up, but I really appreciated the conversation he and I had as well on his podcast. So I asked him, hey, would you mind if I shared that? It gives a little bit more insight into my background, my journey, my philosophies on being a creative as well as making a living from my art. And he was really gracious. He said, go right ahead. So I encourage you to find and follow Craig Burgess in the Twitterverse. You can find him there, and you can follow his podcast and subscribe to it on Apple Podcasts, the Get Doing Things podcast. Really, really cool stuff. Before I share that episode, are you an artist looking to make a living from your art? I hope so, because that's what the show is actually all about. Well, maybe you are in need of some guidance. Maybe you're in need of a coach. Well, I offer coaching services to artists who want to make a living. It seems like most artists are really well set in their creative aspect of their game, but they tend to have more challenges with the business aspect. And that's totally to be expected, because most of us don't go to school for business. We don't get our degrees in business. And maybe business is a little bit scary to us, but we need to overcome that if we want to earn a living. And you certainly can overcome it. And it's never been easier to learn from my mistakes. Believe me, that's part of what my coaching is helping you to avoid the pitfalls that I have fallen into and had to climb out of, and also to help you build a plan for your business. Okay, so whether it is finding clients or learning how to price, or acquiring an accountant, or maybe you need to start a corporation, or you have contracts you need to go over, and you're going to need some legal help. I am not legal help, but I can encourage you where to go to find some of these professional services, okay? And so the link is down below in the description, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you and meeting you. It's really reasonably priced, I think you'll find. And I want you to be successful, so that'll be really cool. All right, on with the episode. They're not afraid to look a fool, fail for a moment. I heard somebody put it so spectacularly well this morning that we often refer to mistakes or errors or setbacks as failures, and they're just hurdles. Yeah. They're hurdles, and you have to decide. He didn't say this part, but you have to decide: are they hurdles, or are they forever roadblocks? A big difference.
I think what it comes from for me, and I feel like I've already hit record. I feel like we need to continue now. We're already
fantastic. Let's do it.
We're already into this. I feel like for me, it isn't really putting other things aside or being steadfast and forgetting about everything else. It's a curiosity thing. I think we probably talked about this on your podcast. It's just a simple fact of, I see a thing and I'm like, I'm going to do it. I've got to give it a try. I've got to go at it and see if I enjoy it. And it's a little bit like when you meet somebody for the first time and you say, what are you into, or what are you doing? It's usually young people, and they're like, I don't really like anything. I'm not really interested in anything. And you're like, why don't you just go and try some stuff? It's a little bit like that with me, but it's pathological. It's the other way around. I just want to do everything, explore everything, see everything, try everything, particularly creativity-wise, because there isn't really one medium that bores me particularly. So I just want to
Yeah.
go at them all.
Yeah, you talked about your parents supporting you in your pursuit, and then you brought up a mentor who you're still in touch with, and I think those mentors. I don't think this. I believe we're lost without them.
Mm.
You know, there's only so far you can get, and you need somebody who's ahead of you to stop and put a hand back and to help you along. And you know, you may reach a level with that mentor where they become a peer, you know, or a friend, or but we need um, that person ahead of us who has been through the wars, right? Who is made as many or more errors, right, than you have, and they're willing to uh, vulnerably lead you. I mean, I don't know that they all do it vulnerably, but I think they expose their vulnerabilities. It's like, you know, just lifting up the hood of the car to show you how things work.
Mm.
And, you know, I remember my dad was a mechanic and he'd tell me, now, if you're ever wearing a tie, don't lean over a running engine. And, you know, I haven't seen anybody work on a car who's wearing a tie, but he was old school. So perhaps, but you need someone to help you along.
Who was your mentor? Who was your creative mentor?
Um, so I'm really fortunate in that I had several along the way. And the first one was my father. And he, he was a Brit. He was from north of London, and he was um, a machine repairman for a locomotive part of General Motors, and he moved from North London to Chicago, and he was also very creative, and he liked me. You know, he didn't just love me; he liked me. He wanted to be around me,
Yeah.
and he was so much fun, and he was very creative. And so when I was a little kid, he'd bring me out in the garage, and he'd pull out the oxyacetylene torches and he'd get a flame going and he'd have different colored rods of glass and we'd melt the glass into shapes, or we'd be working on ceramics. He built a kiln out in the garage, but he was always encouraging me with that. And he also encouraged me to try to pick something to make a living at that I would really enjoy, because I'm going to be doing that for the majority of my life. And I loved art, and it was never really a question for me as a child that I was going to be an artist. And when I was 6, he took us to see Star Wars at the theater. And I mean, as a little kid, he said it. My dad was a math guy, a numbers guy, and as we were getting ready to go to the theater, he he sells Star Wars to the family as it's set in the zeros, which we were all like, what does that mean, first off? So my dad must have read a long time ago, right? In a galaxy far, far away. And he went, it was set in the zeros. And so, you know, we're in misery getting to the theater, and we're sitting there, and then, you know, the screen goes black, and I remember the feeling of seeing that ship come in off the corner of the screen. And, you know, a 6-year-old, I'd never seen anything like that, but no one had ever seen anything like that. That was like a miracle up on the screen. And then the cantina sequence popped on, and then, you know, you have all the swashbuckling and romance and everything that poured into me, and that was stuff that I wanted to somehow live that. And then my mom was a horror movie fan, so she'd have me, this little kid, watching her horror movies with her, which were, you know, much tamer than they are today, right? But I folks took me to see an American Werewolf in London in 1980 or 81. It all comes back to London, Craig. And there's the showstopper in the middle of that, and I don't know how many people have seen it anymore, because I'll be speaking with younger folks, and they don't know of it, but there's an in camera, meaning no digital effects, transformation in the middle of the movie that is just astonishing by Rick Baker. And I left the theater, and so that would have been 1980. I would have been 9. It's not a movie for a 9-year-old, by the way. And I left the theater, and I remember thinking to myself, that I want whatever that was, I want to do that. And so my teen years became about pursuing special effects makeup. And that's where my next major mentor comes in, and that is Dick Smith, who's since passed away. He passed about 5 years ago. I think he was 94. And Dick was a makeup artist who really bridged the gap between old Hollywood and new Hollywood. And he bridged the gap because he was in New York. He was NBC's first makeup artist. As a matter of fact, I believe they still use all of his color makeup today.
Wow.
And he kind of made it up as he went along, but he ended up after film, or after television, he went into film. And so he did the makeup effects for Taxi Driver and the Godfather films. And then the big one, well, I guess some people would say the Godfather was the big one, but The Exorcist was his.
And Godfather's boring though, isn't it?
Well, so you get to the second one, right? The second one, there's a lot going in, but it also shows the difference in filmmaking. Like I'll watch Star Wars once in a while, and my son is like, this is so slow. And I'll be sitting with him going, yeah, it is kind of slow, isn't it? And then you see everything nowadays, everything's racing past, or you get these fast cuts, but it's a sign of the times. Dick had done The Exorcist, and then he just shared all his knowledge with all of these young artists out in Hollywood and all around the world. And the reason why the prosthetics are so amazing is that he was generous.
So if we're talking about The Exorcist, for example, for anybody who doesn't understand what makeup is, obviously we're not talking about just dabbing on a bit of eyeliner on somebody's eyes here. What kind of stuff did he do on The Exorcist?
Well, it was prosthetic makeups, I would say. Those were some of the, I mean, it was, I wouldn't say that it was standard, but it was a pretty straightforward approach that he used with the prosthetics on I can't think of the actress's name right now, the young girl.
Linda Blair.
Linda Blair.
Yeah.
Linda Blair?
Linda Blair, I think it is, yeah.
But then there was also, the famous head spinning, right? And so Dick had made this mannequin where the head would spin. And because it was in the early 70s they were shooting, and filmmaking was entirely different than it is today, and there was a different level of awareness of people shooting things, he couldn't leave the mannequin where the head spun on set, because if it walked off, it was weeks and weeks of work. He'd have to make a new one. So he also hadn't constructed it so that he could break it down and throw it in the trunk. So it sat in the passenger seat of the car. And the head was on ball bearings. So as he's sitting in Manhattan, driving from his home to the set, the head would just turn and look out at people in traffic, and people would be horrified. But I love that that's how he had to do it. But so there was the mannequin itself. There were other crazy reverse effects that he did where her belly, like what raises up, they shot it in reverse, was the words "help me," as the girl is crying out for help from the possession. And but he gave all of that information away to people who were worthy of it, people who reached out to him. And I guess that's what I mean by worthy, right? Is they reached out to him and he wanted to pass it along. And so when I was 15, I started calling all these effect shops in Hollywood. And, I was remarking about your dulcet tones, your deep voice. And, as a 15-year-old, my voice was like this. And I'd be chatting with somebody at the studio for a little bit, and then they would gather that I wasn't some 30-year-old guy, right? They'd say, wait a second, how old are you? I'm 15. Oh, okay. And they would all tell me, you need to talk to Dick Smith. Yeah. So I called Dick Smith up. I found out where he was at in New York. I called him up, and his wife answered. And she said, well, he's not here. He's in Chicago, which is where I lived. And I said, oh, I'm in Chicago. And she said, let me take your number. I'll have him call you. And I thought, well, okay, I'm never going to hear from him. Well, I had driver's ed the next morning. And when I returned home, my mother told me, don't go anywhere. Dick Smith has called 5 times this morning. I said, what? And so he called me back, and a 6th time. And I remember him saying to me, listen, I'm not going to, and I'm excited, right? And he's trying to get me to calm down a bit. And I just remember him saying, I'm not going to promise you that you're going to be an artist or a special effects makeup artist, but I'll take a look at your work and I'll be honest. And then he said to me, the only difference between you and me is I've made more mistakes. And I mean, I think about a 65-year-old Oscar-winning artist passing that on to a 15-year-old that he doesn't even know that he called 5 times because I wasn't around and he's on set busy doing stuff. That's a special person. And so I studied under him, and we became friends over the years. I'd go visit him here and there. And it led to me going to LA to interview with effects studios. And I also had this other weird situation, or fortunate situation, where I was dating this girl who's a volleyball player, and she was in club volleyball, so it was pretty serious stuff. And her coach would see guys hanging around the girls, right? And he's like, okay, what do these kids want? So he would make it his point to get to know these guys and kind of shoo them off if they were no good. And he asked me, what am I interested in? Just like you talked about earlier, talking to somebody, what are you interested in? Yeah. And I said, well, I want to be a special effects makeup artist. I would tell anybody who would hear me at that age, this is what I want to do. Isn't it cool? And he said, well, my brother-in-law is in charge of all the props at Lucasfilm. Wow. At Skywalker Ranch. Would you like me to put you in touch with him? And I said, well, yes.
Yes, please.
So it was about 3 years later, I was 21, I believe. I flew out with my buddy Wayne, and we flew into LA, and we immediately flew up to San Francisco. And a couple of days later, I was standing on the property of Skywalker Ranch. And I'm up by all the matte paintings and there's the Ark of the Covenant, and I'm wearing Indiana Jones jacket, and there's Darth Vader's helmet, and there's all the models. And I mean, I'm just salivating over all this stuff. And then a couple hours later, I'm standing in George Lucas's office, and he was gone for the day. I remember, I think somebody had said he hurt his wrist or something. He had to go get his wrist taken care of. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, how did I get here? Like, how did I get to this place? This is crazy. And I had this overwhelming feeling and belief that I could get anywhere now. I can do anything. And I don't mean it as like, it was humble, like I was overwhelmed by it. But I thought, all I've got to do is be intentional, and I can get somewhere. And so I went and interviewed them with ILM, which is Lucasfilm's effects company, and that was a really great visit. And I interviewed with other effects houses, and the majority of them had said, look, if you move out here, we'll give you work when work comes. But it didn't work like you'd get the job and then move out. That's not how it worked. And there was one effects house I wanted to work for, and that was Rick Baker, who'd done American Werewolf in London. And he was my last interview. And I was so nervous. I remember he came out. I'm sitting in this kind of little. It was like a meeting foyer, and it had all of his work. So it had like all the Eddie Murphy movies where he's did multiple characters
Yeah.
because he'd done Coming to America. There's Michael Jackson's Thriller he had done, Gorillas in the Mist, all these gorillas, and he sat and he asked me how Dick Smith was, and we chatted about that because Dick was his mentor, and then he leafed through my portfolio, and about 20 minutes into it, his assistant came out. She said, "Rick, we need you in the back," and he said, "Excuse me a minute," and I said, "Nope." I said, "Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. You've been fantastic." And he said, "Just wait a second." And so that was his ringer, right? If he wanted to get out of it, I'm assuming it was his ringer. It's like, if it's not going well, just come in 20 minutes. So then another door opens up, and it was like Willy Wonka, right? Walking into his office, and there's Harry and the Henderson's head from, the Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And I asked him, wow, how do the mechanics work in that? And he just peeled the skin back on it, and he showed me everything. And then, I'm looking around all the amazing things in his office, and he threw me a brick of clay, and he said, "Sculpt a wrinkle for me." So I got a loop tool and I sculpted a wrinkle, and he said, "I sculpt wrinkles like that." He said, "A lot of the guys in the studio don't sculpt wrinkles like that. You sculpt wrinkles like me," which was kind of cool and generous, right? And then after a while, he's like, "All right," it was kind of like, "Sit down, kid. Let me tell you about Hollywood." And my portfolio was not where it needed to be to work for him at that point, but I just wanted to get in. And I remember uh, he asked me what I wanted, and I said, "I'm here to work for you. I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to work for you at your studio. I think you're the best. I want to work with the best for the best." And he let me down very gently. He had his guys and his ladies and everybody who worked all in order. And, he was 40 and he had a couple of kids he was raising, and he didn't really have it in his bandwidth to train me. And so, I walked away from that, and I decided I'm not going to move to LA. Like, I would have moved if Rick Baker had said yes. I would have lived on the streets or whatever. But I wasn't disappointed by that, because I had an opportunity, and I went and I put all my cards on the table. All you can do is try, right? And get yourself into proximity, and then ask. And so when I returned home, I was trying to decide what to do next. And I realized I didn't want to do special effects makeup for a living. And I had always been a very strong illustrator, and so that was something I was pursuing. I was making a living airbrushing t-shirts. You can make a really good living airbrushing t-shirts. It's crazy. And I fell in with these toy designers, with these sculptors. I guess Chicago in the 60s through, well, today, there's lots of toy invention shops here, studios. And all of my special effects background was like a cousin of toy design and product development. And I got into these studios, and we're designing Happy Meal toys and things for Hasbro or Mattel, and slot machines, and all of these things. Some of them very organic, some of them very industrial. And what I found is that I was a good sculptor. I was a good designer, but I was really good with a pencil. I could recover quickly from errors. I could meet the demands of the parameters set by Disney or anybody, any license. And then I could originate views of things. We want Darth Vader doing this, arm up, doing this over here, and meet the requirements, and I liked it. I was efficient, it was fun, and I loved working with the studios. And then I was starting to make some money, and so then I got this big mural job I did that was like 108 feet of mural, and I took all the money from that, or a portion of the money from that I'd earned, and I invested into a Mac, and I got this $3,000 computer, and it's sitting on my table. I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I remember I thought it didn't work properly because I hadn't plugged in the B for the RGB cord. So I just had the red and the green. I'm like, oh, this is a mess. And then got that sorted out. And then I started to work with other product development companies digitally. And then the internet really came along. And then that's where I grew my business. It was really good. It was a good season. It's been a good season for a long time.
I've got questions to ask about toys and things like that, but I've had a question on my lips for about 10 minutes. It's just so fascinating to just let you talk about that. It's amazing. But the main question I had, we get to the point where you buy a Mac. How old would you have been at that point? 22, 23?
Older. No. It was 99. So I would have been 28.
Okay. So if we roll back a little bit to the interviews in Hollywood, the Hollywood interviews, the thing you didn't really mention is how you learned your craft. So what were you doing to learn the craft at that point?
Well, I don't think I learned it well enough because I didn't get hired. I was so Dick Smith. I graduated high school, and my folks would have sent me to a 4-year university, but I wasn't interested. And it's not because I wasn't a good student. I was a very good student. I was not interested. I was interested in being an artist. I was interested in entrepreneurship. Every art school that I mean, my folks didn't really understand the American education system. Some people might say nobody does. But I wasn't interested in going to paint pears and peaches somewhere. I had an experience in we have a junior college here, and so you can get your first 2 years in, or you can get associate's degrees and all. And I went to this college to stay on my folks' insurance, and I took an art course, and it was drawing 101 or something basic. And I probably had I had issues. I was probably a hard art student to lead. I think I think I was pretty judgmental. But this teacher was having us do, 2-point perspective drawings, 3-point perspectives, then do a 2-point perspective of or 3-point perspective of this desk. Yeah. And so we all had our desks. And then she said, let's take our desks now and turn our desks into something else and put it into a different environment, like a TV in outer space. So everybody had these TVs in outer space. Well, I took my desk and I turned it into a fiery cauldron, and it was in a cave, and there was this like skeletal cobra made up of human bone, all this stuff. And it wasn't to her liking. And I remember her saying to me, that cauldron doesn't look like a desk. And I replied by saying, well, I don't think these TVs look like desks. Isn't that the point? And she said, no. And I remember at that point I said, okay. And I was polite to her, and I didn't say any more to her. I took my D on that drawing, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to take business courses from now on. I'm going to figure out the art thing on my own, and I'm going to take accounting. I'm going to take business law. I'm going to take management. I'm going to take entrepreneur classes. I focused on business. And so before that, to kind of come back around your question, I drew all day when I was a kid. And then my dad would take me out to buy plaster, and I bought alginate, which is the soft material that you could cast faces with. And then I learned how to make a cast of a face, and then pour the plaster into that casting, and then to take the face and then to set that up with a sealant so that I could sculpt prosthetics on it to change the look of somebody, so that I could then soak that in water and float those pieces off, and then make all the separate molds off of that face to make a base for the clay, so that I could get the edges and seams down, to then make a casting of that. So when I took that apart and scraped the clay out, the bottom part had the cheek of somebody's real face in it, and the negative had a casting of what the old age makeup or whatever it would be would look like. And then when you put those together, you have that open space, and you would fill that with foam latex and bake it in the oven. And so my poor mother had this oven that stunk of rubber, right? And then you take it apart, and then now you've got a prosthetic piece to use. Yeah. And it was much more intensive than my personality at the time was able to focus on. I would say it was very undisciplined, and I liked to draw concept sketches. I loved the idea of things. Most of us fall into that, right? The idea is wonderful, yeah. And then the actual execution is a different animal entirely.
So you were kind of just learning stuff, picking up things, trying it maybe for a few weeks obsessively, and then probably getting a little bit bored with that, and then moving on to something else until you found drawing, basically, or illustration, and that was the thing.
Yeah. And airbrushing, really, that was the tool that set me free, because I was out of high school. I had no money. I did not want to get a regular job anywhere. That felt like death to me. So I had this airbrush, and airbrushing t-shirts was a thing in '89. And so I started airbrushing t-shirts, and I sold a couple. And then there were some shops around, and I fell in with this one shop. All you need is a chance, right? And these people brought me along. And then about a year and a half into it, I was doing my own thing connected to a shop in a mall. And I think I was 20, and I made 11,000 American dollars in a month over Christmas. Wow. And I mean, I worked for it, and I was sick as a dog after. And I mean, I don't think it was healthy, but I mean, as a 20-year-old, it like blew my mind. It was like, you remember when I said with the American Wolf of London, whatever this is, I want this. It was like, business wise, I was like, this, like I made money. I think I can do this. It was just proof of concept coming to be.
So you were never kind of just free range creative. You were always looking kind of as a way to make it a job as well, which I think is quite unusual, especially for somebody so young.
Yeah, I think because of my dad telling me, you might want to figure out what you want to do, because you're going to have to make a living at it for the majority of your life. It might as well be something you enjoy. That really limited the options in my mind. And the other thing my dad told me, I must have been in middle school, maybe early high school. I remember him telling me, hey, he called me Johnny, I make a good living. And he made a good living. He said, but I trade my time for money. Don't trade your time for money, trade your skills for money. And I don't even know what it meant at the time to my, young brain, but it resided inside of me long enough that it became part of me. And so I was just this guy who was always thinking, how can I make a living from what I do? And that helped me to stay independent, because I was constantly looking for opportunities to provide value to clients. And I knew if I could provide value, if I could solve problems, and then if I could package it in a manner that made it ridiculously simple for my clients, where they wouldn't even have to think about the project anymore. Like, I would be so on top of it, they'd hear from me before I heard from them asking. And then if I was easy to work with and pleasant, I mean, all of that just added up to a living.
And then, so you did the airbrushing t-shirts. How long did you do that for?
So I airbrushed t-shirts for about 6 years, I think. And then I had another crazy happenstance. I'm in airbrushing, and I'm kind of done at this point. I don't feel like airbrushing t-shirts anymore. I'm 24 or 5 or something. There's only so many, you know, teddy bears with Gina loves Ted. You can paint in them, right? And that's what I felt like at the time. They are near and dear to me still. That now looking back, but this. When you airbrushed out at a mall, the idea is foot traffic, and the idea is also that it's an impulse buy because it's fun, it's unusual, and you would have eyes on you, and you could kind of feel the eyes. So I feel somebody's eyes on me, and I look a little bit over my shoulder, and it's this 40-something-year-old guy with a tweed jacket on, and he's really just watching me. And so I often initiate it anyway. How are you doing? Good, good. How are you? Good. What, can I interest you in a shirt, or can I answer any questions? No. And I'm just airbrushing. And he says, hey, why do you use those Pache airbrushes? And I thought, okay, well, he knows what I'm using. That's interesting. And so I remember the first thought I had was, what do you care? But then I said, well, it's what I've got. They're really good. They're reliable. And he says, you should use Badger airbrushes. And he pulls out of his coat a Badger airbrush, and he hands it to me. And he says, I'm Ken Schlattfeld from Badger Airbrush. And I really like your airbrush, and would you come in and have a meeting with me on Monday morning? And I said, yeah. And he gave me his card, and off he went. And I went in and I had a meeting with Ken, and I walked out with a retainer. I was going to be paid monthly to be on call for him and his company. And so, through Badger Airbrush, I learned about what a retainer is, the benefits that come with that. And I had all the airbrush equipment I could ever want to put my hands on. And then he'd call me on a Wednesday and say, hey, can you fly to LA next Thursday for a couple of days? Sure. Can you fly? We got to go to Germany for Toy Fair. We're going to go for a week. You up for that? Yep. And so I got to see a chunk of the States and some of the world. And I had this relationship with them for 10 years. And, I'd go out and meet with I wouldn't say explicitly to meet, but I had met like the CEOs of major retailers that were selling their product, and Badger felt comfortable sending me to engage with them, just not to sell anything, but just to show them how it works, how easy it is. And I just have an interest in people doing well too, we're in pandemic times, and it's a weird time, but the best way to show someone how to use an airbrush is literally to ask them, hey, can I put my hand over your hand? And then I'm going to tell you, relax all your hand muscles. And I'm going to show you how it feels to paint and how to achieve certain effects. And that was just such an incredible way to transfer the experience to someone. So, yeah.
What I really like about that Badger story, about, you were airbrushing t-shirts in the mall, and a guy walks up to you and sees potential. It feels like it should be a movie or something. But what I really like about it is it's this thing that a lot of people miss with their creativity, be whatever it is, writing or being an artist or being a designer or musician or whatever. So many people just won't put themselves out there. I mean, the modern day mall is usually Twitter, Instagram. It's even easier than ever. You don't have to set up a stall on any of these things. Well, you do. It's a digital one, but it's very, very easy to set up. I mean, it took some bravery to do it in a mall, do it in front of people, and all that kind of thing. And then an opportunity was almost inevitably going to arise because you had eyeballs on your work every single day. But so many people just won't dare do that. And I know good artists who won't even set up an Instagram profile, because they're just scared of what's going to happen. You know, I can't think of any negative that happened in that situation.
You know, I think life can be really hard. Um, you know, I had the benefit of a father who really poured into me, who was a good man, who was interested in me. And I, I I don't know that everyone, well, I know for certain not everyone has that. And then to be a personality type where I'm an extrovert, and I I've probably always been more confident than I should be. Um, but you know, my competency grew over time, and 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 I think that one of the you brought it up. One of the biggest problems is a fear of venturing out into the world, whether it be at the mall or online or wherever it is that you're going to do it, because now you're exposed. You know, I felt that when I started my show, and I was nervous to hit that button, and I'm like, I'm not afraid of stuff like that,
Yeah.
but it was like, there was just something about it. I was like, okay, it's going to be out there now. And um yeah, I think it's hard. I think that's why, if somebody's stuck, if they're not making progress in some way, I think they need to stop and take a look at what is the hurdle they need to get over. What is stopping them? What is penning them in? Because chances are it's probably got something to do with your childhood or your family. There's something there that is in your subconscious that needs to be dealt with. And and yeah, my heart goes out to anybody who's stuck right now, because it takes work to get out, and it takes intentionality to get out of it, to get past it. And it
I've
can be painful. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I remember feeling the same when I first started my podcast, and at that point in 2017, when I started my podcast, I'd already done a lot of other things online. I had a public Twitter profile, I had a public Instagram profile, not many followers, but I was making stuff out in the public. But there was just something different with the podcast, and I guess this is the same with any creative pursuit, because I'd never done it before. I'd never put myself out there in that way before. Nobody had ever heard my voice before. There's all these kind of weird things going on with it. So the first step was putting your voice on a recording, and also then getting comfortable to hear your own voice, to edit it, and then being comfortable putting it out there. There's a lot of hurdles just in that one thing. And then when you think about the extra hurdles, maybe I'm going to put it on YouTube now. Well, now I've got to get comfortable with my face being on the internet. The truth is, not many people watch it or see it, but there's just a thing about it being on the internet, isn't there? There's the potential for 7 billion. Obviously, there isn't 7 billion people with the internet, but there's potential for billions of people to see it. The truth is that billions of people won't, but there's something in that, both negatively and positively. When the potential there is for 7 billion people to see it, it makes you a little bit scared. But also on the flip side, when the potential for 7 billion people to see it, it only takes one person, like your Badger story, to see the work, go, yes, this is exactly what I want. I want to work with that person. And I think that's what's really the magic about putting your creative work out there, that you just never know where it's going to lead. It sounds like your life has been full of that, those opportunities.
Oh yeah. I remember reading a quote from Back to the Godfather, who directed it, Francis Ford Coppola. And somebody had asked him, are you worried about the opportunities that you've missed in your life? And he said, he said, no, I'm much more thrilled about the opportunities that I've caught and that I've then pursued. And, I think that's another kind of inherent piece of leverage I have in my makeup, is that I'm an optimist. And it doesn't mean I'm always optimistic or feeling good, but I know the sun's coming up tomorrow and I got a new day to go at it. If today was absolutely terrible,
Yeah.
I just believe that. And I think, a fortunate thing for me is growing up in the 70s, we didn't have television like we do today. We had a couple of channels, right? And those were fuzzy. And my dad worked a lot. I was an only in a lot of ways. I have an older sister, but she was almost out of the house by the time I was born. And I think drawing saved me in a lot of ways, drawing and story. So Star Wars and horror movies and story really, really saved me from things that probably could have tipped the ship. And I think they set me up, seeing stories and loving stories and seeing that there's always a challenge ahead for the main character, for the protagonist. And I don't think that I was aware of it, but I think in my subconscious, I went, well, this is just how it is. There's going to be a challenge. And so now I've got to overcome it. And I remember having in my mind, if there's a wall in front of me, I'm going to climb it. If I can't climb it, I'll go around it. If I can't go around it, I'll dig under it. If I can't dig under it, I'll run through it. I just kept on running through options that I might have to press forward. And so, yeah, it's I don't want anybody else's life. I've enjoyed all the ups and downs, and the downs have made me resilient.
Well, I think you've made a career out of being creative, and I honestly, doing the same, I can't think of a better way to make a living. Obviously, I don't have the experience of any other living. My long-term girlfriend's a police officer. I know I don't want to do that for a job anymore. I know other people who've got other jobs, but I genuinely can't think of another thing that I would want to do with my time. Yeah. So,
one of the richest things too, I think about my career is not just that I've been able to create, but the people that I've met along the way. I have so many close relationships, and then people that I'm just fond of who I've worked with in my business that I'll run through a wall for them because of our relationship. And it's made, I didn't see that coming when I was younger. I didn't see that part of it. And that might be the better part of it. I don't know. That's probably a whole other hour though.
Well, I think in the hero story of John, we need to bring this around to the other bit of the story that I kind of forced you to skip over, which is the toy stuff, which we didn't talk about.
Please.
Other people are going to ask about that, especially when I cut you off. So where did that fit in with the airbrushing t-shirts? Did that come after the airbrushing t-shirts, or when did the toy opportunity turn up?
So there was this guy who would come to a mall that I was airbrushing at. His name was Dave.
So another guy, just another random guy.
Another guy. And he'd pop by and he'd say, that's really cool. And he was really encouraging. And then off he'd go. And I went and see him for a few weeks. And he'd pop in, hey, and he'd say hello for a little while. And he was a bigger than life character.
Yeah.
And he was a heavy metal drummer who was a sculptor. And
wow, they are really opposite skills, those, aren't they? One of them is bashing drums really hard and fast, and the other one is being very delicate.
Well, it's funny because a lot of toy sculptors work in wax. So it's a hard, material to work in.
Right.
I mean, you could make it softer, but he would work in this hard material. And whenever he would draw with the pencil, it wouldn't be a minute and he'd snap the lead. Like he just couldn't, he snapped Yeah. You hear it going, and he'd be drawn again. But I was asked by him at one point, "Will you come in and will you help me cast this kid's head?" And I said, "Sure." So it was this young guy from high school who needed a face cast for, it was a friend of the family or something. So I came in and did that. Well, he had, his studio was on the third floor of a 100-year-old limestone church building. And much of the building was vacant. So it felt like a horror movie, like I was walking into a Hammer horror movie. And I went up the stairs, and at the top of the stairs, I can't go any further. There's a garage door there. Like, what the heck is a garage door doing here? And I knock on it. Hang on. And this door rolls back, and Willy Wonka again, right? There's a design studio in here, and there's a mill in the back, and there's drawing stations and sculpting stations and a molding station and a jigsaw, and, oh my goodness. And so I walk in, and, we cast this guy's face, and Dave's a little anxious that my eyes are on everything, right? Because the toy industry is very discreet about sharing anything. So he had me back up to airbrush something for him, and then we slowly developed this relationship, and he knew that I was interested and had a background in special effects makeup. And at some point, I remembered saying to him, because he seemed concerned that I could sculpt and draw, and I was kind of getting an idea of who his clients were. And I said, "Dave, let me make a deal with you." I said, "How about I'll stop sculpting. I'll stop taking sculpting clients on," because I wasn't as interested in sculpting at that point. I didn't want to buy a mill. I didn't want all the equipment, a lot of overhead. I said, and I'll help you sculpt if you need, whatever. But why don't you give me all of your drawing work and all of your design work? And if I have anybody come to me, I'll give you any work that they need something made, a sculpture, anything like that. And so we forged this handshake relationship where I became his hands and eyes as far as all of that stuff for the clients. And I also, would provide him with clients who were after three-dimensional work, but that ended up being work for me anyway. And so I had this relationship with this guy who was my best friend for decades. And then he also was into the haunted attraction industry. He did a haunted house. And so we built this. And when I say we, like, there were welders and electrician and illustrator, designer for the marketing, and then for the rooms. And then we painted the rooms. And then I recorded all the voiceovers for the rooms, because it was all going to be mechanized. And then I would airbrush 30 people every night. And it was a timed haunted attraction. Every room was about 2 minutes. Yeah. And then we had 2 spots in there where there could be a holding tank for groups if something broke. And we'd be open for 5 hours or so, and we'd have 4 or 5 hour lines outside. And then I started to entertain people in the line. I'd airbrush my face up, and I'd go out, and I stumbled on to the Scottish Zombie. So, I was they're talking like this, and they didn't know what I was saying. And it was just fun and a blast. And it was another, running into this one guy changed my life. It may be more directly than anybody else had. And it was a great season of life. Yeah. So, toy was interesting because you might have a concept that needed to be done for, and I'm going to go back to the 90s, for Disney's Hunchback of Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame. And we'd need to figure out 4 concepts for some Happy Meal toys. And now I didn't know if this was a meeting that the client had with Dave or not, or if he was trying to pitch for work or what it was, but we need to come up with a toy that could be made within the parameters of the costs necessary to produce these things in vast numbers. And then, maybe the hunchback, his arm would go down, and if his arm went down, maybe the gargoyles would pop up behind him and they'd go back. And then maybe Esmeralda, if you hit a button on the bottom, she'd turn and she'd hit her tambourine. My set's falling apart. They'd hit the tambourine, and then there'd be like a little bell or a chime that would go off inside of it. And so then I would create these sketches of the romantic image of each of the products, right? This is what it could look like. And then the next step might be, all right, give me a front view, a side view, a back view, a top view. And sometimes you'd have to do both side views, because if the character is doing this, you need this and you need this for the sculptor. And then I would draw mechanisms as well. And I'm not a mechanism guy, but I would sit with Dave and he would say, okay, so we've got a cog here and we do this and that. And then I would draw it to a point where it conveyed the mechanism, and then he could convey that to the client. And then the next step might be, okay, we got the job. We got to sculpt this thing. So he would generally do that, or have his guys do that. And then they'd make the molds, and then they'd have castings that would come out. And then a lot of times I would do the paint jobs. So I would have to mix and match the paints to Disney's PMS tones, to their chips. And that was an art in itself to learn, to match. And you got a white piece of plastic and you're holding it next to the PMS 349 blue, and you're mixing some black in and you're blow drying it, because acrylic always dries darker, and you got to get it right on. And, it just became another skill that I picked up, and I was able to use the airbrush a lot of times in that part of the world as well. And then once I became digital, I started to use that in toy design. And then we had a couple of opportunities pop up with clients who offered us royalties based on potential, they'd give us some money to develop something. And then nothing ever caught with that, it was still fun to do, but there's possibilities with royalties, and royalties can be ridiculously good money.
Oh, I thought you was going to tell some story then where you invented some kind of toy, and now you're a secret, maybe you are a secret millionaire. You wouldn't be.
I wish. I'm I've had some good times with royalties, but not that good. If only. Hopefully, yeah, we'll see.
So that's the toy stuff. Where does that leave you today? What's the main creative pursuit today, and what's the lessons we could take away from this?
So I still do quite a bit of product development for clients. And that can range from conceptual for internal meetings, conceptual for marketing and sales. Depends who you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a sales-driven company, you can get a call at 5 p.m, and got a meeting with Walmart tomorrow. We need this drawing. Can you do this drawing? Everybody's frantic. Sure. And that can be where you make your money, right? Because it's all about helping people out of their problems. So product development, design of just about anything, from packaging to wraps to labels to kind of mundane things to very exciting things, to public art and murals. I still do. I am an illustrator, a guy who likes to draw by nature, and basically, if somebody has an issue that can be solved through visual communication, I can generally help, and I'm thrilled to do it. So I work in Illustrator, I work in Photoshop, I work a lot in Procreate now on the iPad. That lets me be just about anywhere at any time. I love that. And then kind of out of left field. I don't think you know this one about me, and you can decide if you want to go down this road or not. But I got into ministry about 10 years ago, and I've been pastoring a church. So I preach like every couple of weeks or so.
Oh, I can tell you've been preaching for an hour.
So I have, I just kind of, I'll go where I think I'm supposed to go and do what I'm supposed to do. So it's good stuff.
I think one thing I really love about you, after listening to you speak about all that for this last hour, you've got a very similar attitude to me when it comes to being creative and probably life as well, to be honest, that you just kind of do the things that interest you. And I know that sounds really basic, but it is so rare to find somebody these days, especially when they've been doing a thing for a long time, when they've been doing a skill for a long time. The thing that people tell you that you should do is, so you were an illustrator or a drawer, as you put it, you should be just focusing down one very specific skill within that range. So maybe you'd be a technical artist now for houses or something like that. That's the path that we're told we should go down. And I'm a designer by trade, so really all I should be doing is, I don't know, designing websites or logos or whatever. But we've both done the same thing, where we just do a thing because we want to do it. And we follow wherever that goes, wherever that might end up leaving us. Sometimes it's a success, sometimes it's a failure, sometimes it's somewhere in the middle. But you've done the same thing, and it sounds like you're still doing it to this day. And I think that's the most important part of creativity, is just keeping that curiosity and just following it wherever it goes.
I agree. I think that I'm a weird mix of optimism, pragmatism, and romance, and I like to go into areas where I'm delighted by something, and it could be a person or a personality, it could be a particular project, or who knows what it is. But if I find some delight and opportunity there, I'm in.
Is it a delight in the opportunity? Is that the way that you'd put it? Or is it curiosity? What's the thing? What's the one thread?
Well, yeah, isn't it? Those are kind of together, right? I mean, like, curiosity lights me up.
Yeah.
I had, and you can cut this if it doesn't work in here, but I got a call a couple of years ago from a client, and I hadn't, she wasn't at the same company where I'd met her. She was somewhere else. I hadn't heard from her in a while. And she asked me if I'd come in and brainstorm. And so I was going to be there for their brainstorm meeting with all of their CEOs and VPs and all the head honchos. And there would be 9 of us in this room. And the idea is that I was going to stand at a whiteboard and kind of take visual notes, as well as, write words down and concepts, but make visual notes of things. And it was going to be for the morning, and I gave her my rate, and I loved her as a client. She was so cool to work with. And so I show up, and we have a coffee, and then it's time to go in, and we're in for 20 minutes. We're in this meeting, and somebody says, so wait, why are we doing this? And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then they said, well, because we kind of did this already, so why are we doing this? So the meeting started to shift right away. And once it started, once I heard those words, that was a cue for me to go, okay, I really need to pay attention now. Like, I need to pay a deeper attention than usual, because there's a lot moving now. There are a lot of pieces moving, and I want to be helpful. And it could have been that there was no opportunity for me to be helpful, but that's not what happened, because they started down a new path of brainstorming something different from what had been intended. And I remember my client said, well, why don't I get up and take some notes? And I said, nope. I said, why don't you sit down? Because I wanted to be at least somehow useful, right? I said, let me get up and I'll take notes. And apart from just understanding what their product was by looking at it and seeing it, I didn't really know anything else about the company. And so what happened is I became a lightning rod for the ideas that they poured out. So I could say, hang on one second, can you explain that to me? And then they would explain, and I would make a note, or I would give it back to them and say, I'm hearing you say this. Is this what it is? Yes, no, fix it, do that. And then I took notes, and then we ended up coming up with stories. We wrote 5 different stories for product. And when it ended, it was 5 at night. So I'd been there the whole day. And then I was going to render kind of Mad Men ad style these 5 different stories for 2 days later, which that turned into a whole different thing because my client's grandmother passed away the next day unexpectedly. And now she had asked me, will I work with the team? So I'm working with the team. And what I realized in the midst of working with the team is I now have 5 bosses, all with the same interest, but from a different vantage point. And so I had to navigate that. And then, I remember I reached out to her because we're friends too. And I said, hey, so who's my boss? Who do you want me to listen to? And she said, I'm your boss. Send out your communications to me and I'll make sure it gets filtered out. So I remember I didn't have answers on things, and like the parameter of the deadline is closing, and I'm like, I've got to manage a print shop across the states to print this stuff, and I have to have it to them by a certain time because people are flying out to this city and this state, and they got to pick the stuff up, and my goal is not to let anybody know that it's as difficult as it is, right? Short of calling them up and saying, hey, we got a real issue here, or I need this sorted out. Like, I need this info. Can you get me this info? And so it was chaos and behind the scenes, but nobody knew it was chaos. And that's part of my job, right? And so I remember the print shop wouldn't receive my 100 megabyte images because they wouldn't fit onto their little site to transfer them to their port. And I'm like, look, I got to send this file to you. I'm on the phone with this guy and he says, well, we can't open up outside files that don't come through our port. I said, listen, I got people flying in. I have no reason to attach any bugs or fire or anything nasty to surprise you. And you know where I'm at and you know who I am. I need you to open this. And I said, I will go to the ends of the earth with you if you get into trouble. And so thank goodness the guy, because I don't know that I would open it if I was him, but he opened it and he did the work and everything went well. And then, nobody questions then when you send the huge invoice in for the work that you've done. Mm. So, I would say some of the delight in that is the problems to overcome, and then to read the different personalities and to read the different perspectives from the different seats in the room and try to satisfy as best I can everybody along the way while taking care of my client who's got a personal tragedy happening while managing some unseen print shop way across the world. and it was just like, there's something about being on the edge of the knife that's like exciting. This could go either way, but it usually doesn't go the bad way, and yet you're able to guide it in, which, and maybe just one last point, you poor guy, you're trying to wrap this up, is that I'm a pretty easygoing guy and I like to have fun, and I like to draw and paint, and I like to hang out and talk about stuff like this. And then inside of me, there's also this driven taskmaster that is like, and I don't mean like a judge, like we all have the judge that calls us posers or whatever, but the judge that's looking at the work I'm doing and going, nope, that eye's a little off. You got to move that back. You got to push this up. It's doing an hour. Push, push, push. There's like an aggressor inside of me, but it works for me. And I think if we're going to get stuff done, we have to have that. We have to have that I don't even know what to call it apart from a driven admin with a whip or something inside of me that's like, okay, this isn't right. This has got to be fixed.
Mm.
But it's not like a critic or a judge that's going, you're no good. You're no good. It's like helpful.
Mm.
Does that resonate for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a standard, isn't it? You've got to have a standard, a creative standard or a production standard or whatever it is. There's been lots of times when I've been working on jobs, usually with print companies, where the standard's not high enough or whatever, and you need to get into difficult conversations. And it's not that you being a taskmaster or someone nasty or whatever, but the standard's not high enough, and you know it's not high enough, and you're batting the ball for your client. That you're the in between in that situation. And there's been times for me like that where I've had to find a different print company at the end of it. I've had print companies say, we can't make it this green. Like, why not? It's just a color. Why can't you make it this green? You're a lithographic print house. Surely you can make any color that I tell you to. It's not like I'm asking you to go off the CMYK scale. I've got it printed on another sheet of paper here. The green is possible on paper. So there's like those kind of situations, and it isn't necessarily a taskmaster as such. It's just a standard. And I think there's some people who let that standard go sometimes, and they just want to get the job done no matter what. They're going to hit the deadline, they're going to get the job done, and they think that's enough. And then there's other people, maybe a little bit like me and you, where they'll push right up until the last second of the deadline to make sure that the standard is the standard that they expect and want. And I've been in situations where I've been in cellars, in buildings, and trying to do a photo shoot in 3 days, and it has to be done in 3 days. And I'm fiddling around with things that I should not be fiddling around with, taking a photo 100 times when it was good enough at the second time. And I know the deadline's sinking and I've only got 3 days, but it's just a standard because you have the creative vision in your head and you want to achieve it and you see it. It's like an intangible thing, isn't it? And I often ask those kind of questions of people at work, and people get pissed off at me when I'm always the guy who brings it up. Oh, well, shouldn't that just be just like a little bit? It's fine, Craig. No, but it should just, no, it's fine, Craig. No, it needs to just be just a little, no, it's fine. I don't often win those battles, but, it's a standard.
Well, there's, like you said, there's a standard. And I would say that as I've gone through my career, I think I've learned kind of where to let things go, right? Because there's a standard, there's your standard, and then maybe there's your perfectionist standard, or mine, I'll say.
Yeah.
And then there's, where's the client at? What are they paying? When is it due? You've got to, all that stuff. If people say that doesn't come into play, it does. And I'm not saying that you should short shrift the quality for that, but I'm saying that reality pragmatically comes into play, and it's got to end at some point.
Yes.
So you do your best with what you got.
Yeah, and I think often the only way you become a professional creative particularly is by knowing the good enough line. The good enough line is usually a bit higher than what the client expects, potentially sometimes a bit lower than what you expect, but it's good enough within the range of what you do. I mean, I remember the photo shoot that I'm referring to, I was melting things in my oven to make these icicle things for days before that photo shoot. I lost out massively on that, in terms of my time and everything, but there was just it was the first time I'd ever done anything like that, and I just wanted it to be good because I'd stepped into a world that I wasn't experienced in. I've done photo shoots and things like that before. This was a jewelry photo shoot, particularly, and I was stepping into a new realm, and I was nervous that I wasn't going to do a good enough job. So there was like an extra level I felt like I needed to bring to it. So I was, melting stuff in ovens. I was melting those little wedding crystal things to make icicles, because it was a winter jewelry brochure, and I wanted ice. But I didn't want ice, because I knew, well, you can't work with ice very long, and I knew I'd be taking 100 photos of one piece. So I spent like a weekend melting wedding crystals, and I just had boxes of wedding crystals that I was ordering off Amazon, just spending like.
Did you order a budgie to sit in the corner so that when it fell off the perch, you'd know it's time to get out of the house? The chemicals.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome though. But you're trying to answer the bell, right? And it's exciting, and you're doing your best, and you venture into strange territory sometimes.
Yeah. Well, in that situation, all the work was up front. So the whole point was I'd do all the work up front, and then there'd be no stress on me for the 3 days. When we got asked to do it again, I did it the other way around. And the other way around, the idea was it was a winter brochure again, a jewelry brochure. But this time I was going to use paper. So I was going to use a particular kind of paper that I'd found that looked nice. It had a nice texture on it that shot really nice with photos. But all I did was just take down a couple of rolls of this particular card paper in blue and white. And then in the cellar, not the photo set or anything. In the cellar, I was cutting out these pieces of paper, and I've always been really crap at arts and crafts as well. So I was live making these sets that I'd just not pre-planned at all in the same 3 days. Oh my God, that was like the worst 3 days of my life. You just every 5 minutes you just go in between thinking you can't do it, making something amazing, thinking you can't do it, making something amazing, and seeing the deadline tick down, and also handling £30,000 worth of jewelry in one piece. That's what you live for, though, isn't it?
It's pretty much.
Sometimes.
You in the middle of it, it's awful, right? And then you get through it, and it's like it might still be awful for a while, but then you've learned stuff, and you've learned stuff about yourself, and then you've got an amazing story to share, right?
Yeah.
And that's fun. Like I so wish that we weren't separated by the ocean and by the pandemic. It'd be fun just to go down the street and sit and chat and have a meal and a beer, and I love that. That's some of this. Like, I really enjoyed interviewing you for my show, and I love artists. I love getting to know people, and it'd be fun to just have more of that. That's good stuff.
It's coming back. It's coming back soon.
Cheers to that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll definitely be over there when I can. So I guess we should wrap up. Let me start playing this. So you've got a minute on the time. I'll give you 30 seconds or so. Do you want to plug anything or say anything?
Sure. So I would just say if you got something you're supposed to go do, just get about the business of doing it. Don't be frightened to fail. And then if you want to see Craig, my interview with him, you can go over to the Breakthrough Creative, which is on YouTube, and it's a podcast show as well. And it's about the business of art and the art of business.
Love it.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks a lot, man. We'll definitely talk again. Hopefully see you in person soon. And I'll see you soon.
Cheers. I'd love that. I love that. Yeah. Hey, thanks again, Craig, for loaning out this episode to me. I hope that it was fun for you and beneficial with its insights at learning a little bit more about me and my background and my journey. And I hope that you are going to get busy about the business of doing whatever it is, that next step you need to take to either start your business or to grow your business in a new direction. Perhaps you're going to niche down and you're going to work on that task this week, or maybe you're going to work on an elevator pitch so that when you run into that potential new client, you're going to be able to quickly and succinctly communicate who you are and what it is you do and what problem you can solve for them. So until next time, I am John McDavitt for the Breakthrough Creative, and I hope you have a spectacular week. Cheers.